Rudyard Kipling was born in India just over 100 years ago, when it was part of the British Empire, and many of his stories and poems are about India, the British soldiers there and the Indian people, the mountains and plains and the jungles and the animals who lived there. The Just So stories are about different animals and how they came to be the way they are. There are 12 stories altogether in the book, and you're going to hear 4 of them. The first one is called The Elephant's Child, and it takes place not in India, but in Africa.
In the high and far-off times, the elephant, oh best beloved, had no trunk. He had only a blackish bulging nose as big as a boot that he could wriggle about from side to side, but he couldn't pick up things with it. But there was one elephant, a new elephant, an elephant's child, who was full of satiable courteosity, and that means he asked ever so many questions. And he lived in Africa, and he filled all Africa with his satiable courteosities. He asked his tall aunt, the ostrich, why her tail feathers grew just so, and his tall aunt, the ostrich, spanked him with her hard, hard claw. He asked his tall uncle, the giraffe, what made his skin spotty, and his tall uncle, the giraffe, spanked him with his hard, hard hoof. And still he was full of satiable courteosity. He asked his broad aunt, the hippopotamus, why her eyes were red, and his broad aunt, the hippopotamus, spanked him with her broad, broad hoof. And he asked his hairy uncle, the baboon, why melons tasted just so, and his hairy uncle, the baboon, spanked him with his hairy, hairy paw. And still he was full of satiable courteosity. He asked questions about everything that he saw, or heard, or felt, or smelt, or touched, and all his uncles and his aunts spanked him, and still he was full of satiable courteosity. One fine morning, in the middle of the precession of the equinoxes, this satiable elephant's child asked a new, fine question that he never asked before. He asked, "What does the crocodile have for dinner?" Then everybody said, "Shh," in a loud and dreadful tone, and they spanked him immediately and directly without stopping for a long time. By and by, when that was finished, he came upon Kolo Bird, sitting in the middle of a wait-a-bit thorn bush, and he said, "My father has spanked me, and my mother has spanked me. All my aunts and uncles have spanked me for my satiable courteosity, and still I want to know what the crocodile has for dinner." Then Kolo Bird said with a mournful cry, "Go to the banks of the great grey-green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, and find out." That very next morning, when there was nothing left of the equinoxes because the precession had proceeded according to precedent, this satiable elephant's child took 100 pounds of bananas, the little short red kind, and 100 pounds of sugar cane, the long purple kind, and 17 melons, the greeny crackly kind, and said to all his dear families, "Goodbye. I'm going to the great grey-green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, to find out what the crocodile has for dinner." And they all spanked him once more, for luck, though he asked them most politely to stop. Then he went away, a little warm, but not at all astonished, eating melons and throwing the rind about because he could not pick it up. He went from Grahamstown to Kimberley, and from Kimberley to Karma's country. And from Karma's country he went east by north, eating melons all the time, till at last he came to the banks of the great grey-green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, precisely as Colo Bird had said. Now, you must know and understand, O best beloved, that till that very week and day and hour and minute, this insatiable elephant's child had never seen a crocodile and did not know what one was like. It was all his insatiable curiosity. The first thing that he found was a bicoloured python rock snake curled round a rock. "Excuse me," said the elephant's child most politely, "but have you seen such a thing as a crocodile in these promiscuous parts?" "Have I seen a crocodile?" said the bicoloured python rock snake in a voice of dreadful scorn. "What will you ask me next?" "Excuse me," said the elephant's child, "but could you kindly tell me what he has for dinner?" Then the bicoloured python rock snake uncoiled himself very quickly from the rock and spanked the elephant's child with his scalesome, flailsome tail. "That is odd," said the elephant's child, "because my father and my mother and my uncle and my aunt, not to mention my other aunt, the hippopotamus, and my other uncle, the baboon, have all spanked me for my satiable curiosity, and I suppose this is the same thing." So he said goodbye very politely to the bicoloured python rock snake and helped to coil him up on the rock again and went on, a little warm but not at all astonished, eating melons and throwing the rind about because he could not pick it up, till he trod on what he thought was a log of wood at the very edge of the great grey-green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees. But it was really the crocodile, O best beloved, and the crocodile winked one eye like this. "Excuse me," said the elephant's child most politely, "but do you happen to have seen a crocodile in these promiscuous parts?" Then the crocodile winked the other eye and lifted half his tail out of the mud, and the elephant's child stepped back most politely, because he did not wish to be spanked again. "Come hither, little one," said the crocodile. "Why do you ask such things?" "Excuse me," said the elephant's child most politely, "but my father has spanked me, my mother has spanked me, not to mention my tall aunt the ostrich and my tall uncle the giraffe, who can kick ever so hard, as well as my broad aunt the hippopotamus and my hairy uncle the baboon, and including the bicoloured python rock snake with a scalesome, flailsome tail just up the bank, who spanks harder than any of them. And so, if it's quite all the same to you, I don't want to be spanked any more." "Come hither, little one," said the crocodile, "for I am the crocodile." And he wept crocodile tears to show it was quite true. Then the elephant's child grew all breathless and panted and kneeled down on the bank and said, "You are the very person I've been looking for all these long days. Will you please tell me what you have for dinner?" "Come hither, little one," said the crocodile, "and I'll whisper." Then the elephant's child put his head down close to the crocodile's musky, tusky mouth, and the crocodile caught him by his little nose, which up to that very week, day, hour, and minute had been no bigger than a boot, though much more useful. "I think," said the crocodile, and he said it between his teeth like this, "I think today I will begin with elephant's child." At this, O best beloved, the elephant's child was much annoyed, and he said, speaking through his nose like this, "Let go. You are hurting me." Then the bicoloured python rock snake scuffled down from the bank and said, "My young friend, if you do not now immediately and instantly pull as hard as ever you can, it is my opinion that your acquaintance in the large patterned leather ulster," and by this he meant the crocodile, "will jerk you into yonder limpid stream before you can say Jack Robinson." This is the way bicoloured python rock snakes always talk. Then the elephant's child sat back on his little haunches and pulled and pulled and pulled, and his nose began to stretch. And the crocodile floundered into the water, making it all creamy with great sweeps of his tail, and he pulled and pulled and pulled. And the elephant's child's nose kept on stretching, and the elephant's child spread all his little forelegs and pulled, 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 and his nose kept on stretching. And the crocodile threshed his tail like an oar, and he pulled and pulled and pulled. And at each pull, the elephant's child's nose grew longer and longer, and it hurt him hideous. Then the elephant's child felt his legs slipping, and he said through his nose, which was now nearly 5 feet long, "This is too much for me." Then the bicoloured python rock snake came down from the bank and knotted himself in a double clove hitch round the elephant's child's hind legs and said, "Rash and inexperienced traveller, we will now seriously devote ourselves to a little high tension, because if we do not, it is my impression that yonder self-propelling man of war with the armour-plated upper deck," and by this, O best beloved, he meant the crocodile, "will permanently vitiate your future career." This is the way all bicoloured python rock snakes always talk. So he pulled, and the elephant's child pulled, and the crocodile pulled. But the elephant's child and the bicoloured python rock snake pulled hardest, and at last the crocodile let go of the elephant's child's nose with a plop that you could hear all up and down the Limpopo. Then the elephant's child sat down, most hard and sudden. But first he was careful to say thank you to the bicoloured python rock snake, and next he was kind to his poor pulled nose and wrapped it all up in cool banana leaves and hung it in the great grey-green greasy Limpopo to cool. "What are you doing that for?" said the bicoloured python rock snake. "Excuse me," said the elephant's child, "but my nose is badly out of shape, and I'm waiting for it to shrink." "Then you will have to wait a long time," said the bicoloured python rock snake. "Some people do not know what is good for them." The elephant's child sat there for 3 days, waiting for his nose to shrink. But it never grew any shorter, and besides it made him squint. For, O best beloved, you will see and understand that the crocodile had pulled it out into a really, truly trunk, same as all elephants have today. At the end of the 3rd day, a fly came and stung him on the shoulder. And before he knew what he was doing, he lifted up his trunk and hit that fly dead with the end of it. "Vantage number 1, said the bicoloured python rock snake. "You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Try and eat a little now." Before he thought what he was doing, the elephant's child put out his trunk and plucked a large bundle of grass, dusted it clean against his forelegs, and stuffed it into his own mouth. "Vantage number 2, said the bicoloured python rock snake. "You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Don't you think the sun is very hot here? Huh?" "It is," said the elephant's child. And before he thought what he was doing, he slooped up a sloop of mud from the banks of the great grey-green greasy Limpopo and slapped it on his head, where it made a cool, sloopy, schlossy mud cap all trickly behind his ears. "Vantage number 3, said the bicoloured python rock snake. "You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Now, how do you feel about being spanked again, huh?" "Excuse me," said the elephant child, "but I should not like it at all." "How would you like to spank somebody?" said the bicoloured python rock snake. "I should like it very much indeed," said the elephant child. "Well," said the bicoloured python rock snake, "you'll find that new nose of yours very useful to spank people with." "Thank you," said the elephant's child. "I'll remember that. And now I think I'll go home to all my dear families and try." So the elephant's child went home across Africa, frisking and whisking his trunk. When he wanted fruit to eat, he pulled fruit down from a tree instead of waiting for it to fall as he used to do. When he wanted grass, he plucked grass up from the ground instead of going on his knees as he used to do. When the flies bit him, he broke off the branch of a tree and used it as a fly whisk. And he made himself a new, cool, slushy, squashy mud cap whenever the sun was hot. When he felt lonely walking through Africa, he sang to himself down his trunk, and the noise was louder than several brass bands. He went especially out of his way to find a broad hippopotamus. She was no relation of his, and he spanked her very hard to make sure that the bicoloured python rock snake had spoken the truth about his new trunk. The rest of the time, he picked up the melon rinds that he had dropped on his way to the Limpopo, for he was a tidy pachyderm. One dark evening, he came back to all his dear families, and he coiled up his trunk and said, "How do you do?" They were very glad to see him and immediately said, "Come here and be spanked for your satiable courteosity." "Pooh," said the elephant's child. "I don't think you peoples know anything about spanking, but I do, and I'll show you." Then he uncurled his trunk and knocked two of his dear brothers head over heels. "Oh, bananas," said they. "Where did you learn that trick? And what have you done to your nose?" "I got a new one from the crocodile on the banks of the great grey-green greasy Limpopo River," said the elephant's child. "I asked him what he had for dinner, and he gave me this to keep." "It looks very ugly," said his hairy uncle the baboon. "It does," said the elephant's child, "but it's very useful." And he picked up his hairy uncle the baboon by one hairy leg and hove him into a hornet's nest. Then that bad elephant's child spanked all his dear families for a long time, till they were very warm and greatly astonished. He pulled out his tall ostrich aunt's tail feathers, and he caught his tall uncle, the giraffe, by the hind leg and dragged him through a thorn bush, and he shouted at his broad aunt, the hippopotamus, and blew bubbles into her ear when she was sleeping in the water after meals. But he never let anyone touch Colo Colo Bird. At last things grew so exciting that his dear families went off, one by one, in a hurry, to the banks of the great grey-green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, to borrow new noses from the crocodile. When they came back, nobody spanked anybody any more. And ever since that day, oh, best beloved, all the elephants you will ever see, besides all those that you won't, have trunks precisely like the trunk of the satiable elephant's child. Now, this story is called The Beginning of the Armadillos. This, O best beloved, is another story of the high and far-off times. In the very middle of those times was a stickly, prickly hedgehog, and he lived on the banks of the turbid Amazon, eating Shelley's snails and things. And he had a friend, a slow, solid tortoise, who lived on the banks of the turbid Amazon, eating green lettuces and things. And so that was all right, best beloved, do you see? But also, and at the same time, in those high and far-off times, there was a painted jaguar, and he lived on the banks of the turbid Amazon too, and he ate everything that he could catch. When he could not catch deer or monkeys, he would eat frogs and beetles. And when he could not catch frogs and beetles, he went to his mother jaguar, and she told him how to eat hedgehogs and tortoises. She said to him ever so many times, graciously waving her tail, "My son, when you find a hedgehog, you must drop him into the water, and then he will uncoil. And when you catch a tortoise, you must scoop him out of his shell with your paw." And so that was all right, best beloved. One beautiful night, on the banks of the turbid Amazon, painted jaguar found stickly prickly hedgehog and slow solid tortoise sitting under the trunk of a fallen tree. They could not run away, and so stickly prickly curled himself up into a ball because he was a hedgehog, and slow solid tortoise drew in his head and feet into his shell as far as they would go because he was a tortoise. And so that was all right, best beloved. Do you see? Now, attend to me, said Painted Jaguar, because this is very important. My mother said that when I meet a hedgehog, I am to drop him into the water, and then he will uncoil. And when I meet a tortoise, I am to scoop him out of his shell with my paw. Now, which of you is hedgehog and which is tortoise? Because, to save my spots, I can't tell. Are you sure of what your mummy told you, said Stickly Prickly Hedgehog. Are you quite sure? Perhaps she said that when you uncoil a tortoise, you must shell him out of the water with a scoop, and when you paw a hedgehog, you must drop him on the shell. Are you sure of what your mummy told you, said Slow and Solid Tortoise. Are you quite sure? Perhaps she said that when you water a hedgehog, you must drop him into your paw, and when you meet a tortoise, you must shell him till he uncoils. I don't think it was at all like that, said Painted Jaguar, but he felt a little puzzled. But please, say it again, more distinctly. When you scoop water with your paw, you uncoil it with a hedgehog, said Stickly Prickly. Remember that, because it's important. But, said the tortoise, when you pour your meat, you drop it into a tortoise with a scoop. Why can't you understand? Oh, you're making my spots ache, said Painted Jaguar. And besides, I didn't want your advice at all. I only wanted to know which of you is hedgehog and which is tortoise. I shan't tell you, said Stickly Prickly, but you can scoop me out of my shell if you like. Ha, said Painted Jaguar. Now I know you're tortoise. You thought I wouldn't. Now I will. Painted Jaguar darted out his paddy paw just as Stickly Prickly curled himself up. And, of course, Jaguar's paddy paw was just filled with prickles. Worse than that, he knocked Stickly Prickly away and away into the woods and the bushes where it was too dark to find him. Then he put his paddy paw into his mouth, and of course the prickles hurt him worse than ever. As soon as he could speak, he said, "Now I know he isn't tortoise at all, but..." And then he scratched his head with his unprickly paw. "How do I know that this other is tortoise, "But I am tortoise," said Slow and Solid. "Your mother was quite right. She said that you were to scoop me out of my shell with your paw. Begin." "You didn't say she said that a minute ago," said Painted Jaguar, sucking the prickles out of his paddy paw. "You said she said something quite different." "Well, suppose you say that I said that she said something quite different. I don't see that makes any difference, because if she said what you said I said she said, it's just the same as if I said what she said she said. On the other hand, if you think she said that you were to uncoil me with a scoop instead of pouring me into drops with a shell, I can't help that, can I?" "But you said you wanted to be scooped out of your shell with my paw," said Painted Jaguar. "If you'll think again, you'll find that I didn't say anything of the kind. I said that your mother said that you were to scoop me out of my shell," said Slow and Solid. "Oh, what will happen if I do?" said the Jaguar, most sniffily and most cautious. "I don't know, because I've never been scooped out of my shell before. But I tell you truly, if you want to see me swim away, you've only got to drop me into the water." "I don't believe it," said Painted Jaguar. "You've mixed up all the things my mother told me to do with the thing that you asked me whether I was sure that she didn't say, till I don't know whether I'm on my head or my painted tail. And now you come and tell me something I can't understand, and it makes me more mixy than before. My mother told me that I was to drop one of you two into the water, and as you seem so anxious to be dropped, I think you don't want to be dropped. So jump into the turbid Amazon and be quick about it." "I warn you that your mummy won't be pleased. Don't tell her I didn't tell you," said Slow Solid. "If you say another word about what my mother said," the Jaguar answered. But he had not finished the sentence before Slow and Solid quietly dived into the turbid Amazon, swam underwater for a long way, and came out on the bank where Stickly Prickly was waiting for him. "That was a very narrow escape," said Stickly Prickly. "I don't like Painted Jaguar. What did you tell him that you were?" "I told him truthfully that I was a truthful tortoise, but he wouldn't believe it, and he made me jump into the river to see if I was. And I was, and he's surprised. Now he's gone to tell his mummy. Listen to him." They could hear Painted Jaguar roaring up and down among the trees and the bushes by the side of the turbid Amazon till his mummy came. "Son, son," said his mother ever so many times, graciously waving her tail. "What have you been doing that you shouldn't have done?" I tried to scoop something that said it wanted to be scooped out of its shell with my paw, and my paw is full of ickles," said Painted Jaguar. "Son, son," said his mother ever so many times, graciously waving her tail. "By the prickles in your paddy paw, I see that must have been a hedgehog. You should have dropped him into the water." "Well, I did that to the other thing, and he said he was a tortoise, and I didn't believe him, and it was quite true. And he dived under the turbid Amazon, and he won't come up again. I haven't anything at all to eat, and I think we'd better find lodging somewhere else. They're too clever on the turbid Amazon for poor me." "Son, son," said his mother ever so many times, graciously waving her tail. "Now attend to me and remember what I say. A hedgehog curls himself up into a ball, and his prickles stick out every which way at once. By this you may know the hedgehog." "I don't like this old lady one little bit," said Stickly Prickly under the shadow of a large leaf. "I wonder what else she knows." "A tortoise can't curl himself up," Mother Jaguar went on ever so many times, graciously waving her tail. "He only draws his head and legs into his shell. By this you may know the tortoise." "I don't like this old lady at all," said Slow and Solid Tortoise. "Even Painted Jaguar can't forget those directions. It's a great pity that you can't swim, Stickly Prickly." "Don't talk to me," said Stickly Prickly. "Just think how much better it would be if you could curl up. This is a mess. Listen to Painted Jaguar." Painted Jaguar was sitting on the banks of the turbid Amazon, sucking prickles out of his paw and saying to himself, "Can't curl, but can swim. Slow Solid, that's him. Curls up, but can't swim. Stickly Prickly, that's him." "He'll never forget that this month of Sunday," said Stickly Prickly. "Hold up my chin, Slow and Solid. I'm going to try to learn to swim. It may be useful." "Excellent," said Slow and Solid, and he held up Stickly Prickly's chin while Stickly Prickly kicked in the waters of the turbid Amazon. "You make a fine swimmer yet," said Slow and Solid. "Now, if you can unlace my back plates a little, I'll see what I can do towards curling up. It may be useful." Stickly Prickly helped to unlace Tortoise's back plates, so that by twisting and straining, Slow and Solid actually managed to curl up a tiddy wee bit. "Excellent," said Stickly Prickly. "But I shouldn't do any more just now. It's making you black in the face. Kindly lead me into the water once again, and I'll practice that side stroke which you say is so easy." And so Stickly Prickly practiced, and Slow Solid swam alongside. "Excellent," said Slow and Solid. "A little more practice will make you a regular whale. Now, if I may trouble you to unlace my back and front plates 2 holes more, I'll try that fascinating bend that you say is so easy. Won't Painted Jaguar be surprised?" "Excellent," said Stickly Prickly, all wet from the turbid Amazon. "Excellent. I declare I shouldn't know you from one of my own family. 2 holes, I think you said? Mm-hmm. A little more expression, please. And don't grunt quite so much, or Painted Jaguar may hear us. Now, when you've finished, I want to try that long dive which you say is so easy. Won't Painted Jaguar be surprised?" And so Stickly Prickly dived, and Slow and Solid dived alongside. "Excellent," said Slow and Solid. "A little more attention to holding your breath, and you'll be able to keep house at the bottom of the turbid Amazon. Now, I'll try that exercise of wrapping my hind legs round my ears, which you say is so peculiarly comfortable. Won't Painted Jaguar be surprised?" "Excellent," said Stickly Prickly. "But it's training your back plates a little. They're all overlapping now instead of lying side by side." "Oh, that's the result of exercise," said Slow and Solid. "Oh, you notice that your prickles seem to be melting into one another, and that you're growing to look rather more like a pine cone and less like a chestnut burr than you used to." "Am I?" said Stickly Prickly. "Well, that comes from my soaking in the water. Oh, won't Painted Jaguar be surprised?" They went on with their exercises, each helping the other, till morning came, and when the sun was high they rested and dried themselves. Then they saw that they were both of them quite different from what they had been. "Stickly Prickly," said Tortoise after breakfast, "I am not what I was yesterday, but I think that I may yet amuse Painted Jaguar." "That was the very thing I was thinking just now," said Stickly Prickly. "I think scales are a tremendous improvement on prickles, to say nothing of being able to swim. Oh, won't Painted Jaguar be surprised? Let's go and find him." By and by they found Painted Jaguar, still nursing his paddy paw that had been hurt the night before. He was so astonished that he fell 3 times backward over his own painted tail without stopping. "Good morning," said Stickly Prickly. "And how is your dear gracious mummy this morning?" "She's quite well, thank you," said Painted Jaguar. "But you must forgive me if I do not at this precise moment recall your name." "Oh, that's unkind of you," said Stickly Prickly, "seeing that this time yesterday you tried to scoop me out of my shell with your paw." "But you hadn't any shell. It was all prickles," said Painted Jaguar. "I knew it was. Just look at my paw." "You told me to drop into the turbid Amazon and be drowned," said Slow Solid. "Why are you so rude and forgetful today?" "Don't you remember what your mother told you?" said Stickly Prickly. "Can't curl but can swim. Stickly Prickly, that's him. Curls up but can't swim. Slow Solid, that's him." Then they both curled themselves up and rolled round and round Painted Jaguar till his eyes turned truly cartwheels in his head. Then he went to fetch his mother. "Mother," he said, "there are 2 new animals in the woods today. And the one that you said couldn't swim, swims, and the one that you said couldn't curl up, curls. And they've gone shares in their prickles, I think, because both of them are scaly all over instead of one being smooth and the other very prickly. And besides that, they're rolling round and round in circles, and I don't feel comfy." "Son, son," said Mother Jaguar, ever so many times, graciously waving her tail, "a hedgehog is a hedgehog, and can't be anything but a hedgehog. And a tortoise is a tortoise, and can never be anything else." "But it isn't a hedgehog, and it isn't a tortoise. It's a little bit of both, and I don't know its proper name." "Nonsense," said Mother Jaguar. "Everything has its proper name. I should call it armadillo till I found out the real one. And I should leave it alone." So Painted Jaguar did as he was told, especially about leaving them alone. But the curious thing is that from that day to this, O best beloved, no one on the banks of the turbid Amazon has ever called Stickly Prickly and Slow Solid anything except armadillo. There are hedgehogs and tortoises in other places, of course. There are some in my garden. But the real old and clever kind, with their scales lying lippity-lappity one over the other, like pine cone scales, that lived on the banks of the turbid Amazon in the high and far-off days, are always called armadillos. because they were so clever. So, that's all right, best beloved. Do you see? How the whale got his throat. In the sea, once upon a time, oh my best beloved, there was a whale, and he ate fishes. He ate the starfish and the garfish, and the crab and the dab, and the plaice and the dace, and the skate and his mate, and the mackerel and the pickerel, and the really, truly, twirly, whirly eel. All the fishes he could find in all the sea he ate with his mouth. So, till at last there was only one small fish left in all the sea, and he was a small 'stute fish, and he swam a little behind the whale's right ear so as to be out of harm's way. Then the whale stood up on his tail and said, "I'm hungry." And the small 'stute fish said in a small 'stute voice, "Noble and generous cetacean, have you ever tasted man?" "No," said the whale. "What is it like?" "Nice," said the small 'stute fish. "Nice, but nubbly." "Then fetch me some," said the whale, and he made the sea froth up with his tail. "One at a time is enough," said the 'stute fish. "If you swim to latitude 50 north, longitude 40 west, that is magic, you will find, sitting on a raft in the middle of the sea, with nothing on but a pair of blue canvas breeches, a pair of suspenders, you must not forget the suspenders, best beloved, and a jackknife, one shipwrecked mariner, who, it is only fair to tell you, is a man of infinite resource and sagacity." So the whale swam and swam to latitude 50 north, longitude 40 west, as fast as he could swim, and on a raft in the middle of the sea, with nothing to wear except a pair of blue canvas breeches, a pair of suspenders. You must particularly remember the suspenders, oh best beloved, and a jackknife, he found one single solitary shipwrecked mariner trailing his toes in the water. He had his mummy's leave to paddle, or else he would never have done it, because he was a man of infinite resource and sagacity. Then the whale opened his mouth back and back and back till it nearly touched his tail, and he swallowed the shipwrecked mariner and the raft he was sitting on, and his blue canvas breeches, and the suspenders, which you must not forget, and the jackknife. He swallowed them all down into his warm, dark, inside cupboards. And then he smacked his lips, so, and turned round 3 times on his tail. But as soon as the mariner, who was a man of infinite resource and sagacity, found himself truly inside the whale's warm, dark inside cupboards, he stumped and he jumped and he thumped and he bumped, and he pranced and he danced, and he banged and he clanged, and he hit and he bit, and he leaped and he creeped, and he prowled and he howled, and he hopped and he dropped, and he cried and he sighed, and he crawled and he bawled, and he stepped and he leapt, and he danced hornpipes where he shouldn't, and the whale felt most unhappy indeed. Have you forgotten the suspenders? So he said to the 'stute fish, "This man is very nubbly, and besides, he's making me hiccup. What shall I do?" "Tell him to come out," said the 'stute fish. So the whale called down his own throat to the shipwrecked mariner, "Come out and behave yourself. I've got the hiccups." "Nay, nay," said the mariner, "not so, but far otherwise. Take me to my natal shore on the white cliffs of Albion, and I'll think about it." And he began to dance more than ever. "You had better take him home," said the 'stute fish to the whale. "I ought to have warned you that he is a man of infinite resource and sagacity." So the whale swam and swam and swam, with both flippers in his tail, as hard as he could for the hiccups. And at last he saw the mariner's natal shore on the white cliffs of Albion, and he rushed halfway up the beach and opened his mouth wide and wide and wide and said, "Change here for Winchester, Ashford, Nassau, Keene, and stations on the Fitchburg Road." And just as he said "Fitch," the mariner walked out of his mouth. But while the whale had been swimming, the mariner, who was indeed a person of infinite resource and sagacity, had taken his jackknife and cut up the raft into a little square grating, all running crisscross, and he had tied it firm with his suspenders. Now you know why you were not to forget the suspenders. And he dragged that grating good and tight into the whale's throat, and there it stuck. Then he recited the following sloka, which, as you have not heard it, I will now proceed to relate. "By means of a grating, I have stopped your eating." For the mariner, he was also a Hibernian. And he stepped out on the shingle and went home to his mother, who had given him leave to trail his toes in the water, and he married and lived happily ever afterward. So did the whale. But from that day on, the grating in his throat, which he could neither cough up nor swallow down, prevented him eating anything except very, very small fish. And that is the reason why whales nowadays never eat men or boys or little girls. The small 'stute fish went and hid himself in the mud under the door-sills of the equator. He was afraid that the whale might be angry with him. The sailor took the jackknife home. He was wearing the blue canvas breeches when he walked out on the shingle. The suspenders were left behind, you see, to tie the grating with. And that is the end of that tale. next story is called The Cat That Walked by Himself. Hear and attend and listen, for this befell and behappened and became and was, O my best beloved, when the tame animals were wild. The dog was wild, and the horse was wild, and the cow was wild, and the sheep was wild, and the pig was wild as wild could be, and they walked in the wet wild woods by their wild lones. But the wildest of all the wild animals was the cat. He walked by himself, and all places were alike to him. Of course, the man was wild too. He was dreadfully wild. He didn't even begin to be tame till he met the woman, and she told him that she did not like living in his wild ways. She picked out a nice dry cave instead of a heap of wet leaves to lie down in, and she strewed clean sand on the floor, and she lit a nice fire of wood at the back of the cave, and she hung a dried wild horse skin, tail down, across the opening of the cave, and she said, "Wipe your feet, dear, when you come in, and now we'll keep house." That night, best beloved, they ate wild sheep roasted on the hot stones and flavored with wild garlic and wild pepper, and wild duck stuffed with wild rice and wild fenugreek and wild coriander, and marrow bones of wild oxen, and wild cherries, and wild grenadillas. Then the man went to sleep in front of the fire, ever so happy. But the woman sat up, combing her hair. She took the bone of the shoulder of mutton, the big flat blade bone, and she looked at the wonderful marks on it, and she threw more wood on the fire, and she made a magic. She made the first singing magic in the world. Out in the wet, wild woods, all the wild animals gathered together where they could see the light of the fire a long way off, and they wondered what it meant. Then Wild Horse stamped with his wild foot and said, "Oh, my friends, and oh, my enemies, why have the man and the woman made that great light in that great cave, and what harm will it do us?" Wild Dog lifted up his wild nose and smelled the smell of the roast mutton and said, "I will go up and see and look and say, for I think it is good. Cat, come with me." "Nay," said the cat. "I am the cat who walks by himself, and all places are alike to me. I will not come." "Then we can never be friends again," said the wild dog, and he trotted off to the cave. But when he had gone a little way, the cat said to himself, "All places are alike to me. Why should I not go too, and see and look and come away at my own liking?" So he slipped after Wild Dog, softly, very softly, and hid himself where he could hear everything. When Wild Dog reached the mouth of the cave, he lifted up the dried horse skin with his nose and sniffed the beautiful smell of the roast mutton. And the woman, looking at the blade bone, heard him and laughed and said, "Here comes the first. Wild thing out of the wild woods, what do you want?" Wild Dog said, "Oh, my enemy, and wife of my enemy, what is this that smells so good in the wild woods?" Then the woman picked up a roasted mutton bone and threw it to Wild Dog and said, "Wild thing out of the wild woods, taste and try." Wild Dog gnawed the bone, and it was more delicious than anything he'd ever tasted. He said, "Oh, my enemy, wife of my enemy, give me another." The woman said, "Wild thing out of the wild woods, help my man to hunt through the day and guard this cave at night, and I will give you as many roast bones as you need. Ah, said the cat, listening. This is a very wise woman, but she is not so wise as I am. Wild Dog crawled into the cave and laid his head on the woman's lap and said, "Oh, my friend and wife of my friend, I will help your man to hunt through the day, and at night I will guard your cave." "Ah," said the cat, listening, "that is a very foolish dog." And he went back through the wet wild woods, waving his wild tail and walking by his wild lone. But he never told anybody. When the man waked up, he said, "What is Wild Dog doing here?" And the woman said, "His name is not Wild Dog anymore, but the first friend, because he will be our friend for always and always and always. Take him with you when you go hunting." Next night, the woman cut great green armfuls of fresh grass from the water meadows and dried it before the fire so that it smelt like new-mown hay, and she sat at the mouth of the cave and plaited a halter out of horsehide. And she looked at the shoulder of mutton bone, at the big, broad blade bone, and she made a magic. She made the second singing magic in the world. Out in the wild woods, all the wild animals wondered what had happened to Wild Dog. And at last Wild Horse stamped with his foot and said, "I will go and see and say why Wild Dog has not returned. Cat, come with me." "Nenny," said the cat, "I am the cat who walks by himself, and all places are alike to me. I will not come." But all the same he followed Wild Horse, softly, very softly, and hid himself where he could hear everything. When the woman heard Wild Horse tripping and stumbling on his long mane, she laughed and said, "Here comes the second. Wild thing, out of the wild woods, what do you want?" Wild Horse said, "Oh, my enemy, and wife of my enemy, where is Wild Dog?" The woman laughed and picked up the blade bone and looked at it and said, "Wild thing out of the wild woods, you did not come here for Wild Dog, but for the sake of this good grass." And Wild Horse, tripping and stumbling on his long mane, said, "That is true. Give it me to eat." The woman said, "Wild thing out of the wild woods, bend your wild head and wear what I give you, and you shall eat the wonderful grass 3 times a day." "Ah," said the cat, listening, "this is a clever woman, but she's not so clever as I am." Wild Horse bent his wild head, and the woman slipped the plaited hide halter over it, and Wild Horse breathed on the woman's feet and said, "Oh, my mistress, and wife of my master, I will be your servant for the sake of the wonderful grass." "Ah," said the cat, listening, "that is a very foolish horse." And he went back through the wet wild woods, waving his wild tail and walking by his wild lone. But he never told anybody. When the man and the dog came back from hunting, the man said, "What is Wild Horse doing here?" And the woman said, "His name is not Wild Horse any more, but the first servant, because he will carry us from place to place for always and always and always. Ride on his back when you go hunting." Next day, holding her wild head high, that her wild horn should not catch in the wild trees, Wild Cow came up to the cave, and the cat followed and hid himself just the same as before. And everything happened just the same as before, and the cat said the same things as before. And when Wild Cow had promised to give her milk to the woman every day in exchange for the wonderful grass, the cat went back through the wet wild woods, waving his wild tail and walking by his wild lone, just the same as before. But he never told anybody. And when the man and the horse and the dog came home from hunting and asked the same question, same as before, the woman said, "Her name is not Wild Cow anymore, but the giver of good food. She will give us the warm white milk for always and always and always. And I will take care of her while you and the first friend and the first servant go hunting." Next day the cat waited to see if any other wild thing would go up to the cave, but no one moved in the wet wild woods. So the cat walked there by himself, and he saw the woman milking the cow, and he saw the light of the fire in the cave, and he smelt the smell of the warm white milk. Cat said, "Oh, my enemy, wife of my enemy, where did Wild Cow go?" The woman laughed and said, "Wild thing out of the wild woods, go back to the woods again, for I have braided up my hair, and I have put away the magic blade bow, and we have no more need of either friends or servants in our cave." Cat said, "I am not a friend, and I am not a servant. I am the cat who walks by himself, and I wish to come into your cave." Woman said, "Then why did you not come as first friend on the first night?" Cat grew very angry and said, "Has Wild Dog told tales of me?" Then the woman laughed and said, "You are the cat who walks by himself, and all places are alike to you. You are neither a friend nor a servant. You have said it yourself. Go away and walk by yourself in all places alike." Then Cat pretended to be sorry and said, "Must I never come into the cave? Must I never sit by the warm fire? Must I never drink the warm white milk? You are very wise and very beautiful. You should not be cruel even to a cat." Woman said, "I knew I was wise, but I did not know I was beautiful. So I will make a bargain with you. If ever I say one word in your praise, you may come into the cave. And if you say 2 words in my praise," said the cat. "I never shall," said the woman, "but if I say 2 words in your praise, you may sit by the fire in the cave. And if you say 3 words," said the cat. "I never shall," said the woman, "but if I say 3 words in your praise, you may drink the warm white milk 3 times a day for always and always and always." Then the cat arched his back and said, "Now, let the curtain at the mouth of the cave, and the fire at the back of the cave, and the milk pots that stand beside the fire remember what my enemy and the wife of my enemy has said." And he went away through the wet, wild woods, waving his wild tail and walking by his wild lone. That night, when the man and the horse and the dog came home from hunting, the woman did not tell them of the bargain that she had made with the cat, because she was afraid that they might not like it. Cat went far and far away and hid himself in the wet wild woods by his wild lone for a long time, till the woman forgot all about him. Only the bat, the little upside-down bat that hung inside the cave, knew where Cat hid, and every evening Bat would fly to Cat with news of what was happening. One evening Bat said, "There is a baby in the cave. He is new and pink and fat and small, and the woman is very fond of him." "Ah," said the cat, listening. "But what is the baby fond of?" "He is fond of things that are soft and tickle," said the bat. "He is fond of warm things to hold in his arms when he goes to sleep. He is fond of being played with. He is fond of all those things." "Ah," said the cat, listening, "then my time has come." Next night, Cat walked through the wet, wild woods and hid very near the cave till morning time, and man and dog and horse went hunting. The woman was busy cooking that morning, and the baby cried and interrupted. So she carried him outside the cave and gave him a handful of pebbles to play with. But still the baby cried. Then the cat put out his paddy paw and patted the baby on the cheek, and it cooed. And the cat rubbed against its fat knees and tickled it under its fat chin with his tail. And the baby laughed, and the woman heard him and smiled. Then the bat, the little upside-down bat that hung in the mouth of the cave, said, "Oh, my hostess and wife of my host and mother of my host's son, a wild thing from the wild woods is most beautifully playing with your baby." "A blessing on that wild thing, whoever he may be," said the woman, straightening her back. "For I was a busy woman this morning, and he has done me a service." That very minute and second, best beloved, the dried horse-skin curtain that was stretched tail down to the mouth of the cave fell down, whoosh, because it remembered the bargain she had made with the cat. And when the woman went to pick it up, lo and behold, the cat was sitting quite comfy inside the cave. "Oh, my enemy, wife of my enemy, and mother of my enemy," said the cat, "it is I. For you have spoken a word in my praise, and now I can sit within the cave for always and always and always. But still I am the cat who walks by himself, and all places are alike to me." The woman was very angry and shut her lips tight and took up her spinning wheel and began to spin. But the baby cried because the cat had gone away, and the woman could not hush it, for it struggled and kicked and grew black in the face. "Oh, my enemy, wife of my enemy, and mother of my enemy," said the cat, "take a strand of the thread that you are spinning and tie it to your spindle whorl and drag it along the floor, and I will show you a magic that shall make your baby laugh as loudly as he is now crying." "I will do so," said the woman, "because I am at my wit's end, but I will not thank you for it." She tied the thread to the little clay spindle whorl and drew it across the floor, and the cat ran after it and patted it with his paws and rolled head over heels and tossed it backward over his shoulder and chased it between his hind legs and pretended to lose it and pounced down upon it again, till the baby laughed as loudly as it had been crying and scrambled after the cat and frolicked all over the cave till it grew tired and settled down to sleep with the cat in its arms. "Now," said the cat, "I will sing the baby a song that shall keep him asleep for an hour." And he began to purr, loud and low, low and loud, till the baby fell fast asleep. The woman smiled as she looked down upon the two of them and said, "That was wonderfully done. No question but you are very clever, O cat." That very minute and second, best beloved, the smoke of the fire at the back of the cave came down in clouds from the roof, because it remembered the bargain she had made with the cat. And when it had cleared away, lo and behold, the cat was sitting quite comfy close to the fire. "Oh, my enemy, wife of my enemy, and mother of my enemy," said the cat, "it is I, for you have spoken a second word in my praise, and now I can sit by the warm fire at the back of the cave for always and always and always. But still, I am the cat who walks by himself, and all places are alike to me." Then the woman was very, very angry, and let down her hair, and put more wood on the fire, and brought out the broad blade bone of the shoulder of mutton, and began to make a magic that should prevent her from saying a third word in praise of the cat. It was not a singing magic, best beloved. It was a still magic. And by the cave grew so still that a little wee mouse crept out of a corner and ran across the floor. "Oh, my enemy, and wife of my enemy, and mother of my enemy," said the cat, "is that little mouse part of your magic?" Oh, no, indeed," said the woman. And she dropped the blade bone and jumped upon the footstool in front of the fire and braided up her hair very quick for fear that the mouse should run up it. "Ah," said the cat, watching, "then the mouse will do me no harm if I eat it." "No," said the woman, braiding up her hair, "eat it quickly, and I will ever be grateful to you." Cat made one jump and caught the little mouse, and the woman said, "100 thanks. Even the first friend is not quick enough to catch little mice as you have done. You must be very wise." That very moment and second, O best beloved, the milk pot that stood by the fire cracked in 2 pieces, because it remembered the bargain she had made with the cat. And when the woman jumped down from the footstool, lo and behold, the cat was lapping up the warm white milk that lay in one of the broken pieces. "Oh, my enemy, and wife of my enemy, and mother of my enemy," said the cat, "it is I, for you have spoken 3 words in my praise, and now I can drink the warm white milk 3 times a day for always and always and always. But still I am the cat who walks by himself, and all places are alike to me." Then the woman laughed, and set the cat a bowl of the warm white milk, and said, "Oh, cat, you are as clever as a man. But remember that your bargain was not made with the man or the dog, and I do not know what they will do when they come home." "What is that to me?" said the cat. "If I have my place in the cave by the fire, and my warm white milk 3 times a day, I do not care what the man or the dog can do." That evening, when the man and the dog came into the cave, the woman told them all the story of the bargain, while the cat sat by the fire and smiled. Then the man said, yes, but he has not made a bargain with me, or with all proper men after me." Then he took off his 2 leather boots, and he took up his little stone axe, that makes 3, and he fetched a piece of wood and a hatchet, that is 5 altogether. And he set them out in a row, and he said, "Now we will make our bargain. If you do not catch mice when you are in the cave for always and always and always, I will throw these 5 things at you whenever I see you, and so shall all proper men do after me. Ah, said the woman, listening, this is a very clever cat, but he is not so clever as my man. The cat counted the 5 things, and they looked very knobby, and he said, I will catch mice when I am in the cave for always and always and always. But still I am the cat who walks by himself, and all places are alike to me. Not when I am near, said the man. If you'd not said that last, I would have put all these things away for always and always and always. But now I am going to throw my 2 boots and my little stone axe, that makes 3, at you whenever I meet you, and so shall all proper men do after me. Then the dog said, wait a minute. He's not made a bargain with me, or with all proper dogs after me. And he showed his teeth and said, if you are not kind to the baby while I'm in the cave, for always and always and always, I will hunt you till I catch you, and when I catch you, I will bite you, and so shall all proper dogs do after me. Ah, said the woman, listening, this is a very clever cat, but he is not so clever as the dog. Cat counted the dog's teeth, and they looked very pointed, and he said, I will be kind to the baby while I'm in the cave, as long as he does not pull my tail too hard, for always and always and always. But still, I am the cat that walks by himself, and all places are alike to me. Not when I am near, said the dog. If you had not said that last, I would have shut my mouth for always and always and always. But now I'm going to hunt you up a tree whenever I meet you, and so shall all proper dogs do after me. Then the man threw his 2 boots and his little stone axe, that makes 3, at the cat, and the cat ran out of the cave, and the dog chased him up a tree. And from that day to this, best beloved, 3 proper men out of 5 will always throw things at a cat whenever they meet him, and all proper dogs will chase him up a tree. But the cat keeps his side of the bargain, too. He will kill mice, and he will be kind to babies when he is in the house, just as long as they do not pull his tail too hard. But when he has done that, and between times, and when the moon gets up and night comes, he is the cat that walks by himself, and all places are alike to him. Then he goes out to the wet wild woods, or up the wet wild trees, or on the wet wild roofs, waving his wild tail and walking by his wild lone.